So it's like,
Oh, okay.
she's at that age, but I'm still not. I'm still looking to hang with. So
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that while you can.
yeah. So we are live now, Mason, my friend, and congrats on the new show. You debuted it yesterday. You and Danny, not Meehan.
Yeah,
Correct.
I've known Danny now for like at least a year, and
Yeah.
that's the first time I've ever had to actually think like how his last name is pronounced. And I said that on the show, leading up like 2 hours before. I was like, I got to double check. Just double check. And then I was like, oh, it's fine. This must be it. And of course, I got it wrong.
Well, we've had him on. He's been a guest on my show. He's been a guest on Bill's show, Bears Banter. He's been a guest with Roberts, Bear With Me. I don't think he's done Bears Over Beers, but he did Rule of Three. He had his own show for a little while. He does the Lunch Pail Draft Cast. And not once did he say, hey, guys, you're pronouncing my name wrong. Not once. He waits till he gets on your show, but he's like, I'm going to nip this in the bud right now. And no, but that was a fun show, man. It's like what we're doing here is like a quick injury report. You kind of like, boom, you took it all over the place. You touched on NFL, fantasy stuff. You touched on, obviously the Bears injuries, the Giants injuries, obviously you went a little more in depth. You had some video. You showed the David Montgomery injury. So it's like this, but boom, to a whole other level. And I love how you're touching on the NFL stuff too. That was kind of cool because, we're all football fans. We're all fans of the NFL. So it's cool to get that other perspective. So 5:00 every Thursday. Is that afternoon or is that evening to you? What do you consider 5:00?
To me, I consider that evening. If I can have a dinner, I'm considering that to be evening. I think I could have a nice hearty dinner at 5 and potentially be okay later.
But see, you're still young though. 5:00 dinner. That's us old guys have dinner at 5 sometimes.
Honestly, usually with my schedule, I'm having dinner at like 8 or 9. So that's so far from me.
That's crazy. All right, let me share this stuff real quick to our socials. Yeah, but I thought it was really cool. Then you guys had a chance to cut that podcast up, and then you put it on the podcast channel. So you make sure you guys are all subscribed to obviously us here at Second City Gridiron. But most of what we do on the channel here also ends up as a podcast. So if by some chance you can't catch us, live, what we're doing here, you guys catch us on the podcast. We got, Bear With Me, Robert Schmitz is our post-game show. Of course, we have the Bears at Bear and Balance. That's me and JB. We kind of come at the at the game a day later. We kind of have a chance to watch the film, listen to the press conferences, because the heat of the moment is hard to kind of know what's going on there. Sometimes the information is skewed. So once we have a chance to get more information, we do that. And then Bears Banter this week. Bill had Mark Sylvie on there from ESPN 1000. Awesome show. I just mentioned, Bare Bones with Mason and Danny. And then, of course, we have Making Monsters. Also, that's probably every Friday is going to go up. That's Taylor and Dylan. This week they talked to, oh my God, I forget his name. He's the ACC beat writer. He covered Khalil Herbert's college career at Vatech. So they had a chance to talk to him, get some perspective. So that was cool. And then, of course, the 10-minute drill is another video show that gets cut up and put on the podcast channel. So we got a lot of stuff. And then, of course, Second City Gridiron. It's Robert's all 22 breakdown. It's Sack Watch whenever Robert gets a chance to cut that up and put it on the channel. The Sylvie interviews up here as well. So a lot of stuff happening. But tonight we're here to record a podcast. So Mason, are you ready to rock?
Let's do it.
All right. Oh man, I always hit the wrong button. We're trying to share this to Facebook. I can't stand Facebook. Are you a Facebook guy?
Man, I pretty much use it to keep track of like some people that I'm really, really like not that close with, and then Disney blogs and things for when I do my trips to Disney World. That's about it.
What? You go to Disney World every year?
I do. Actually, I'm going in October. October 22nd through the 29th is my next trip.
Is that the Florida or the California one?
Florida. I've never had a chance to go to California. Just a little too far, a little too small. My wife and I like that you can spend an entire week at Disney World and get away a bit.
Nice. All right, here we go. Let me get a little quick sip here. What's happening, Chicago Bears fans? This is C Formation Conversation. I'm your host, Lester Wiltfong, editor-in-chief over at Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined, as I have this whole season here, by Dr. Mason West. Mason, what's going on, man? Are you doing good this lovely Friday evening?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's actually really nice out, which is a little weird. Last couple Fridays, I feel like I've been chilly. So, actually getting to enjoy being outside a little bit after this, thinking I have a drink on the porch, just enjoy the evening.
Nice. Are you a fire guy? Do you have like a place to put like a fire at night outside by your house, or?
No, I wish. We have a condo and they have all these rules about it. I mean, I'm lucky that I have my smoker out there. I had to fight for that, so I'm not pushing it with any fire pit or anything.
Yeah, we had a smoker at my condo for a while, and it was the smokers are awesome. I got a little bigger smoker. Smoking. If you guys are not smoking, if you're only on a grill, if you never had a chance to go to the smoker stuff, it's so easy. Like it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing because I have the probe, right? The probe thermometer.
Yeah.
Just make sure that there's water in there every now and again. Make sure there's enough wood chips. Then you pull it off and you're like, everyone thinks you're like a chef. It's like, nah, man. 16 hours I slaved away making this roast. So
meanwhile, you're just sitting on the couch the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Then one of these days I'm gonna get. I'm not a tech guy, but one day I'm gonna get it hooked up to my phone because they have those smoker apps now. It's where it hooks up to your thermometer.
That's what mine has. That? Yeah, mine's like a Masterbuilt 800. So gravity fed charcoal. Throws, like you said, some pellets in there. Phone dings when it hits the right temperature. Warns you if there's a flare up. It's awesome.
I knew you would have all the fancy stuff. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into the Bears and the Giants, I do got to talk to you a little bit about the Thursday night game. It has been the talk of the NFL world since last night, and that's the injury to Tua. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. I'm just not that skilled. But last week he got what looked like a concussion. It turned out it was back spasms. That's what they said. Man, from the TV angle, everyone thought it was a concussion, right? So from your perspective, as someone who understands what's going on here, he had to go through some testing there right on the field to get cleared. And then, of course, he had more testing after the game. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what the tests he had to go through to get him cleared in the first place?
Yeah. So, when a player gets an impact to the head of any kind and they exhibit some sort of symptoms or signs suggesting a concussion of some kind, they're pulled off, right? And then you're going to go under that assessment. Sometimes the other way would be like an athletic trainer or the booth, they might just initiate the protocol.
Yeah, so the spotters, right? Watching for
right, exactly. So the fact that they even had the inkling that this is going to be a concussion, we're seeing something here, that to me was already like, okay, there's something funky going on because people saw symptoms matched on the field. Everyone was like, you were saying, people are like, this is a concussion. So that happens. So then you do a sideline survey, right? You take a look at the person, you take their helmet off, the team physician ends up going through a couple things. So there's some no-goes. So basically there's no return to play if the player had a lost consciousness, some gross motor instability. So that's testing the upper motor neurons. You're looking for strength deficits, things like that. There's a couple tests where you'll actually see potentially spinal cord or brain injury with beating of eye movements, beating of musculature, things like that. Confusion, amnesia. If any of those happen, they're not coming back. Some of the other ones might be, the specific history of that event, some of the concussion signs and symptoms you're looking for. So, light sensitivity, noise sensitivity, nystagmus, which is a beating of the eye. And then you're going to focus on that neurological exam. So a cervical spine exam, including range of motion, pain, evaluate speech. Is there slurred speech? Are they talking slow? Observation of how they're walking, gait. And then, like I said, diving even deeper into some of those eye movements. Now, with that kind of stuff, if all of that's normal and then the video looks relatively benign, then they're going to go back to play. If any of that is funky, though, and you suspect a concussion, you go to the locker room, you do a full NFL scat. So that's basically just this concussion test. And then you do another even more in-depth neurological exam while you're in the locker room. If any of that's abnormal, the player's going to stay in the locker room and you're probably now you're done. The problem is Tua never really even got to that point, which is insane to me. He did the sideline survey and then was like, nope, you're good to go. But even just by the video, by the gait, like we talked about, he could barely walk. Him rubbing his head, shaking his head when he came off. I find it very hard to believe that he truly passed that sideline survey.
I mean, is it possible that the players are to the point now where they're because preseason they all take a baseline test to kind of see where they're at, right?
Yeah.
And from talking to you earlier today, you kind of mentioned sometimes players sometimes I kind of skew that a little bit because they know it's, this is their livelihood, right? I mean, some players, they just want to play. No matter what, they want to get on a field. So those sideline tests, those aren't quite as easy to skew because I mean, if there's a concussion, it just happened. So there's no way to kind of cheat that test, is there?
No, it depends on which parts you're talking about. If you're talking about the range of motion and, hey, does this hurt? Hey, things like that. Are you dizzy? A lot of those are questions. You can cheat that part. You can't cheat the upper motor neuron tests. You can't cheat, if you have nystagmus, like I said, the beating of the eye, that's going to show up regardless. So some of them you can, some of them you can't. It depends on how well you do the test. If you have someone who's looking to pass somebody, you'll figure out a way to pass them. If you find someone the other way too, if you're like looking to not to pass somebody and say like I don't care, I know you have a concussion, you'll find stuff to go that route too. You need someone who's a very unbiased, going to go into there and actually do the test as accurately as possible and then assess them as accurately as possible, which can be tough.
That's what they're supposed to have. I mean, they have spotters that are there. The NFL sends spotters to kind of watch for players that are happening during the game. Hey, the 56 looks a little wobbly. Make sure you pull them out and check them. Then they have the doctors on the sideline. They're not team doctors, so I know the Dolphins are getting dragged for this whole thing. But it's like it's not their doctor. I mean, their doctor may have cleared them later in the week. They may have done another test during the week, but game time, it's not the Dolphins doctor, it's the NFL's doctor. So, sorry, let's say he did pass. Let's say he was fine. That hit last night on Thursday Night Football, that was hardcore whiplash. I mean, there wasn't, it wasn't like he was trying to do it on purpose. That's how football happens. And of course it's going to happen like that after he's coming off something where you think it's a concussion. So, even if he would have passed, that was pretty damaging last night. And with his hands, with the brain, that was one of the most scariest things I think I've ever seen on a football field.
Yeah. When you see something like that, I mean, my mind went right to spinal cord because when you see that, what's called decorticate posturing, which is, the arms flexed like they were, the fingers, the hands. I mean, exactly like you were just talking about. You're looking definitely a heavy brain injury, but then you're also worried, like I said, about spinal cord. It's called upper motor neuron lesion, is something that would occur usually there. It's a terrifying thing. Luckily, he did have movement in his arms pretty quickly. Obviously, he got cleared from the hospital. Now, that's also something I would want to point out, though. A lot of people now are saying, like, oh, well, he's out of the hospital. Or there was the McDaniels conference where he was like, we were sitting there watching McGruber and laughing and having a good time on the plane. First of all, why are you watching McGruber? There's so many other options out there. If any, it's just weird. But anyway, there are a plethora of stories where football player, boxer, etc., leaves the match 24, 40 hours later, drops dead. So just because he got discharged from the hospital, just because he was enjoying McGruber, does not mean that he's out of the woods. Currently, I am still worried about Tua, and I'm curious as to where this is going to go for him.
You usually see that kind of stuff in combat sports. You talk about boxing, MMA, where like their limbs will kind of seize up on them, and there was something happened recently where a boxer passed away a few days later or what. I mean, it's just don't mess around with your head injury, guys. I mean, the players they know. I mean, like I said, but some players they want to get out there. I mean, there's still this macho thing going on. They still feel they have to get out there and do what they got to do. And like I said, it's their livelihood, so they want to do all they can. But that's your brain, man. I mean, that's if the brain goes, you're done. You know what I mean? So
it's so easy for us sitting here to say, yeah, like you said, like it's your brain. But think about it from Tua. He's had a rough beginning to his career. Yep. He's had the injuries before. He's finally hitting stride. He's got the weapons. He's feeling good. Like I understand why he is thinking and saying, I can't let this opportunity, I can't let this current flow I'm in go. But someone then has to protect the player. Like you said, whether it's the independent doctor, whether it's the doctors and the trainers of the staff, whether it's the coaches. Someone in the chat we're in posted a video recently that was discussing how Mike Tomlin, held out Ryan Clark after he had his diagnosis of sickle cell anemia. Yep. Even though he was cleared medically, Mike Tomlin said, I know this is not the right time. This is not appropriate. We're going to take this slow and do the right steps. So, so at some point in time, someone's got to help the player. And that's a perfect example of coaches putting health over performance.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he's got to be shut down for several weeks now. I mean, the steps to clear now. We're talking at least a few weeks now since this. I'm assuming this is finally going to be a diagnosis of concussion. So now we're at least talking, 3-4 weeks, probably longer for Tua.
I would imagine so. And this kind of goes also back to why potentially, and I'm saying potentially, there might have been a little funky play with the actual original diagnosis. Because, right, the Dolphins were on a short week. They had to play 4 days later. And to get through the entirety of a post-concussion protocol takes a while. You need to be symptom-free with your everyday activities of daily living. You have to do that for the day. Then you move on to the next day where you have to have limited activity, light aerobic activity, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, symptom-free. Then you move on to heavier aerobic activity. Again, each of these usually takes at least about a day. Then you go to football-specific exercise. Then you do club-based non-contact drills. Then you finally get to do a full football activity. I mean, that's 5 different steps at a minimum. Again, symptom-free. There's no way he would have been back in time if you're doing it accurately. So that's why I'm leaning towards there's maybe something funky going on in the first place. And from this point on, absolutely, it's going to take a while. And especially now with everything going on, the Dolphins, I would assume, are going to be overly conscientious, trying to prove that they are not the team that's going to throw someone out there after they've had a pretty serious, and by pretty I mean very serious, brain assault.
Yeah, a month or two, let them sit, and then even that, let them sit a little longer. So let's get into the Chicago Bears here. Before we get into the injury report, let's talk about this Byron Pringle, wide receiver, went to injury reserve. I heard you on your show. You said that the injury was kind of like just fluky, like he was playing, then he wasn't. I mean, there was no severe hit. I mean, did you see anything in the game that caused him to go to IR? I mean, sideline. What's the deal with Pringle here?
That's the thing. I mean, I was scanning through the game and I didn't see anything particularly.
Yeah.
Usually, with a calf, almost looks similar to hamstring, where someone pulls up normally, and that didn't really come out. So I'm assuming it was something a little more low key. And then when he went to the sideline, maybe during a rotation, a substitution, all of a sudden was like, hey, my calf's tightening up on me. Just based on him going to IR and the fact that it's not a long-term IR, it's a short-term IR, one has to believe it's going to be a calf strain, more in that grade level 2, level 3 area, which would require that, that at a minimum that 4 weeks to be able to heal. It's just one of those little fluky things, like we said, where the force he needed to create, when he pushed off in that moment for the calf to contract, the muscle just couldn't handle it at that time. It's kind of similar to, if you think about the Kevin Durant Achilles tear, if anyone can picture that video where he went to go push off and that Achilles went, it's similar. Just didn't have the strength in that calf in order to handle it at that point in time. And that also kind of goes back to, he missed a lot of time over the summer, right?
Yeah.
So his football shape maybe wasn't at 100%. And you could imagine that would be the case with him missing so much time previously.
This is why a lot of the coaches, especially the Bears coaches, talk about when they want to ramp guys up. They don't want to put them in too quickly because they want to make sure their body's able to do it. And another thing you touched on was the 4-week IR. I mean, this year, for the first time, you can bring up to 8 players back from injured reserve. They have to miss a minimum of 4 games. And when Pringle went to IR, the Bears signed Joe Thomas off their practice squad. And of course, a lot of fans, why are you signing a linebacker when you have a receiver and the receiving core as bad as it is? That's because N'Keal Harry, after next week's game, the 4th game, he can now come back from IR. And the timetable that you talked about when he first had the tightrope surgery, you said that probably made sense that he would come back after 4 weeks. Is that, you still think that's about where he should be?
I'm leaning towards the 6. I mean, he can come back in 4. It's entirely possible. I'm leaning towards the 6 just because the more explosive the player is. So, I actually just recently did a podcast talking about this with Mac Jones because I'm thinking he may require the same surgery.
I caught that with Kyrie, our guy Kyrie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any interest in Patriot stuff, go check it out. It's a really cool podcast, and we broed out a little bit for a while there. It was a cool one to do. He would be more likely to be at that 4-week mark because as a quarterback, especially a not very mobile quarterback, he just doesn't need as much of that explosion. Is not as worried about that ankle stability. For someone like a N'Keal Harry, who you're hoping, again, he's not exactly the fastest wide receiver out there. He's more of a big body guy, but with some of that more downfield explosion that he doesn't need, you're leaning closer to that 5 or 6 week mark, I would believe. But it'll be interesting to see for sure. It's possible, just not as likely.
I believe they can have him practice after the 4 weeks. I believe they kind of let him work out first. Don't have to actually activate him.
Correct.
So they have a chance to look at him. They'll have to ramp up. And then, of course, at that receiver position, the Bears, yeah, the receiving core is not the best, but there's some depth there. I mean, there's no standout guy where you got where he's going to get all the time. They'll rotate those guys a lot. As soon as he is back, they'll have Smith Marset getting some reps there. We'll talk about a guy here in a second who's back now. So they'll have a chance to work him in slowly until he's ready. So we don't have another Byron Pringle situation where he maybe comes back too quick and pulls something. So let's jump into the actual report here. It's a big one, man. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. It's look, if you guys watching the video, the graphic is cut off. Man, I can't even use my fancy graphic. Let's get that out of here. So the Bears, man, we'll kind of hop around because a lot of the injuries that the Bears have, they kind of play in with what the Giants have. So let's just start off with the 3 guys that are out for the Bears. David Montgomery with his ankle. Jaylon Johnson, that quad injury is still bothering him. And then Dane Cruikshank, safety. But this may not be a bad week for Jaylon Johnson. They have to kind of take it easy because as you see, the Giants, they have two guys on IR at receiver. They have 2 starters out right now in Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson, both guys listed as starters. So they only got, I think, 4 healthy receivers. They'll bring a guy from the practice squad probably, but the passing attack's not the best. So if you got to give Jaylon Johnson another week, this is probably the week to do it.
Well, that was my thought, and we dove into this a little heftier when in our Bare Bones podcast. Go check that out if you didn't get a chance to. But Jaylon Johnson wasn't doing much on Thursday. He was just on a bike. Adam Johns reported that he wasn't even riding the bike; he was just sitting on the bike in terms of what he was able to see. But
that's there's a bike in my house here. That's what our bike's used for. It's somewhere to rest or the hats go on it.
Yeah. And with that quad, it's so important. You don't want to mess with the quad because if you need that quad stability in order to really help the ligaments within the knee, those intracapsular ones, like the ACL, PCL, etc. If you rush that, now all of a sudden you're looking at a longer term thing. And like you said, right now the starting receivers are going to be, I believe, is Richie James and Kenny Galladay, who's got 2 passes in like 3 years.
Yeah.
You're not super worried about that if you're the Bears. So if you can buy more time for Jaylon Johnson, you absolutely do that. Because this game is not the one that you need to be rushing him back for.
Yeah, there's some issues there, obviously, with their with the Bears secondary, but the Giants receiving core is not the best. Plus, they got Danny Dimes throwing the ball, he's good for at least a pick or a fumble every week. It seems like that's what's going to happen. So, and then I mentioned David Montgomery. He's obviously out with that ankle injury. Ankle knee is kind of how it was originally listed, but it seems like it's more ankle now. And high ankle sprain. We hear that a lot, and you talked about it on your show, Bare Bones. It's a different type of injury. So if this was the high ankle sprain, they may have wanted to IR him because that's usually a little longer of a recovery time, correct?
It usually is. It's so hard with Dave Montgomery. Every time I think that he's going to be out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it goes back to the MCL he had last year. It goes back to he had a groin strain that last year as well in the early training camp. He blows that number out of the water and he's back sooner. Yeah, I saw this one when I watched the video the first time and I was like, okay, this is a 6-week injury. Knee, ankle, boom, he's going to be out. But, if that was the case, they would have IR'd him for the 4 weeks. There's no reason to keep him around. So, if his knee is fine, if that is a more grade 1 in terms of that high ankle, only had a little bit of that, we'd say a derangement of the syndesmosis between the lower leg bones, the tibia and the fibula. Yeah, you absolutely can come back from that in 2-3 weeks only compared to the original 6 weeks I was thinking.
Plus, he's got that Wolverine blood in him. He's just he's always back early. But with Demo out, that means more Khalil Herbert, more Tristan Ebner, and it's possible they have a practice squad tailback as well. Darrington Evans, he may get called up just so you want to have another guy there. You want to have a guy there that can kind of play some special teams for you. So they might want to call him up just to kind of have an extra body there, just to be on the safe side. And then the Bears have 2 guys listed as doubtful. Matthew Adams, he was out last week. Ryan Griffin also out last week. I can't see either one playing. With Adams, it's the hamstring. And then with Griffin, it's the Achilles. And Griffin actually tested it out on Wednesday. And then he was did not practice Thursday, Friday. So I can't see those guys playing. Is that just the same with you?
I would say the same thing, especially with Ryan Griffin. When you go from a limited participation to 2 DNPs in a row, there was a reactivation there. That Achilles got flared up. likely there was a lot of swelling. Likely he had trouble walking. There was a lot of pain with that. There's just no way I can see that happening. And then even with Matthew Adams, hamstring, 2 DNPs and a limited, like that's not a great sign there.
And then the Bears have 4 questionable players. Robert Quinn, he's sick. He practiced on Wednesday. Then he caught something. They haven't said it was COVID, so that's everyone's first thought is, oh my God, it's COVID. But that hasn't happened. So the Bears are hopeful he'll play. Cairo Santos is questionable with a personal issue. Sterling Weatherford, backup linebacker, questionable. We'll talk about the other questionable guy in a minute. I want to talk really quick about this Cairo Santos situation. Brad Biggs reported that he may miss the game. The Bears are planning on, there's a good chance that he may miss the game for something personal. I did not catch. Was there any late reports about that you saw, Mason?
The only thing I specifically saw was someone did ask Eberflus directly in the press conference if they said, "Are you planning on bringing another kicker in if Cairo Santos is not ready to go?" And Eberflus responded, "I am not willing to talk about that at this time."
Okay.
It's an interesting response. If he wasn't going to be there, you'd think it'd be like, "Hey, Cairo's got some personal stuff. We're going to figure this out going forward." The fact that he was so non-committal either way is a very interesting response on his end.
I'm guessing on Saturday they'll make a roster move. They worked out 3 kickers on Friday: Michael Badgley, Brian Johnson, and Josh Lambo. So I'm guessing they're either going to do a straight roster move where they'll sign him to the 53, or they may put him on the practice squad, make a move there, and then elevate him to the active 53. But I'm assuming Saturday they'll make a move at some point. So make sure you guys all check back at WindyCityGridiron.com, because we're not going to update the podcast, because that's once it's in the can, it's in the can. But I will put an article up really quick on the site if there's a roster move there made tomorrow. And then the 4th questionable guy. We've been waiting to see this rookie, 3rd-round draft pick, Velus Jones Jr. His hamstring. He has not been able to practice. You've been on that with the hamstring injury. You've been calling it. He's going to miss. You said there's probably a good chance, based on how he's been working out, that this will be the week. And he was a full participant on Friday. So you're thinking that we're going to finally see Bayless Jones?
If there was out there somewhere with someone willing to put down a bet, will Bayless play or not play, and they were going to take the no, I would put all the money I have in the world on him playing. I believe we're going to see the debut of Velus Jones. Now, I think there's going to be a bit of a snap count. It's not going to be 100%. And part of that is, again, just managing what he has. You don't want to have some re-exacerbation of the hamstring, but also keep in mind the kind of player he is too. One of the issues I would say Bears fans have had, and some pundits have had, is that he's a bit of a gadget player. And so, no, he's not going to go out there. Don't expect a 10 catch game out of Bayless Jones. Expect maybe a reverse, like Equanimeous St. Brown had. He had 2 of those. One of those is probably going to go to Bayless. Yeah. Maybe even like a handoff like you would give to a Cordell Patterson, like what they're doing with the Falcons. Expect him to run a fly or 2, trying to create that downfield, use that burner speed that he does have. So think about a 6-7 play kind of combo where they're using him in an interesting manner, and then potentially also punt return, kick return, because right now the Bears have gotten nothing out of those 2 positions.
Yeah, with Ebner, he did it in college. He was pretty successful in college, but so far in the NFL with the Bears, Ebner hasn't really done too much. Pettis was, again, another guy who was in college, was fantastic as a return guy, but he hasn't done much with the Bears. So they need some juice there. And if Bayless can give him some juice in the return game, you figure 4 or 5 touches there. You figure he'll get another few touches in the offense. And I'm with you. I think a gadget guy, and you know what? I have no problem if he's a gadget guy. He's a 3rd-round draft pick. He's not being picked to be the starting guy for you. If he can work himself up to that, that's great. But if best case scenario for his entire career, he's a guy that is around here and he has 7, 8, 9 touches a game somehow, some way. You mentioned the jet sweeps. Give it to Jones. The reverses, give it to Jones. A couple things deep, give it to Jones. Down the seam. Let him see what he can do. But with the hamstring injury, if there's any twinge at all back there, they're going to shut that down right away, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's going to be, we talk about spotters for concussion. I mean, the Bears are going to have someone, whether it's Andre Tucker, who's the head athletic trainer, or one of the assistants. I'm pretty sure they're going to get the talking to beforehand, like, hey, keep an eye on Bayless. If you see something a little funky, you let us know and we will pull them out, because we saw earlier, the reason this got delayed so much is he had a re-aggravation. He's not going to tell you because he wants to play. He wants to prove that he was worth that 3rd round pick. He doesn't want to be a disappointment. He wants to be a part of this team and he wants to contribute. So it's going to be very interesting on the Bears sideline in terms of how they're managing that.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I want to see him play. I think they knew he was back. That's why they didn't make a roster move with Pringle. They knew Harry's coming back soon. So, man, I'm excited to see this offense really, really open up here and test the Giants, who it's not a very good football team. I mean, yeah, they're 2-1 like the Bears are, but I mentioned they're missing a couple of receivers. They're also missing their best defensive tackle, Leonard Williams, who, when he was in there for the first 2 weeks, he's a force. I mean, he is a run-stopping force. They talked about it on the 10-minute drill. Robert and JB earlier today, that's videos up on second Secret Down right now. They talked about the differential in the average yards per carry. The Cowboys gashed them. And part of that reason is because Williams was out there. He's a big body in there. He can stop the run. That's what his job is. So he's out. Then, of course, they're missing 2 backup corners, which, okay, they're backup corners, but, man, that hurts their depth, because if there's an injury anywhere, you're turning to guys that, could be a practice squad elevation because you got both your backups out. So I'm picking the Bears. I can't see the Bears losing this week. I know it sounds weird, picking them because and so being so confident about it, especially because the Vegas lines have the Giants favored, but I just can't see the Bears losing this game. How about you?
And you even add on, he's playing, but Kayvon Thibodeau, he had that MCL and he's still not at 100%, so he's going to be slowed down too. I think it's going to be a battle of the run game. We're going to go back to some nice 1980s football between Saquon and Khalil Herbert. They're going to have like 50 carries each. It's going to be nuts. I don't know what it is. There's just something I feel about this week. Like, I didn't feel great going into the last game with Justin. For some reason this week, hearing him talk, I feel better about where he's going to be at. And when I looked at last game, it wasn't like he was looking in the right places. He just wasn't pulling the trigger. So I think with another week of looking at the film, another week of seeing, like we say, hey, trust your eyes and trust what you're seeing, I think we're going to see some better output. And I'm sorry, I just can't pick Danny Dimes. When it comes down to it, I just can't. Like, he's going to fall at least 3 times in this game.
I was watching that game on Thursday, and he seems to have, if we're judging both quarterbacks right now, he seems to have a little better pocket awareness than Justin Fields does right now. But of course, we're talking about a 4-year pro and a guy who's a second-year pro and who's working in a new offense. With Danny Dimes again is in a new offense as well. But that's a very quarterback friendly system they have there. That he's like Brian Dable. That's who Bears fans wanted. They wanted Dable over here. So I think Danny Dimes. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. He's basically on the Mitch Trubisky path here. We'll see what happens with him. But I did a Giants podcast earlier this week. Ed Valentine, Big Blue View. That's a tongue twister. And he was telling me that they don't see him staying. They feel that he's going to be this year. They can't see it working out. He's one of them gone for a long time. And I talk about the turnovers. He averages he literally averages like a turnover a game. I mean, he's good for at least going to happen. And then, of course, you got the defense, the hits philosophy. They're all punching the ball out. Man, I feel weird being so confident. But man, I'm going Bears. I'm going Bears with the money line this week too.
And add in there that Evan Neal, while I was high on Evan Neal, I still am. I think he's gonna be great. He's struggled. And so if there's a get right game for some of these edge rushers and to get going, like Dominique Robinson's been pretty solid. Maybe hopefully Quinn can finally get some pressure on someone. That adds to it too. And then I like one point you brought up in terms of the experience that Danny Dimes has had compared to Justin. Getsy said this week that he still considers this to be Justin Fields' rookie year. Yeah. Like, I mean, last year was a waste. It just was. I'm sorry. He's seeing things way differently. The way they want him to see things are way differently. Hence why I think he's kind of over processing some things. He wants every throw to be perfect instead of taking just the good, right? There's that phrase, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. So I think that's kind of where he's at right now. But you bring in those other factors too. Like, I can't confidently pick the Giants. I would absolutely pick them, like I said, on the money, the Bears on the money line. I'm thinking it's going to be like 23-17 Bears.
Nice. You heard it. It's in there. Bears going to win the game. We're going to move to 3-1. And then does the narrative change, or are we still going to be talking about, yeah, they win, but man, I want to see Justin do better. I think he'll have a little better game this week. I think it's just, again, it's not a very good defense. I think it's coming. I mean, you talked about all the stuff he's having to learn, how they consider him like a rookie again. He's got new footwork. He's holding the ball a little higher. He's got a work on his little bit of arm angle. He's learning a new scheme, and he's throwing to Equanimeous St. Brown, and was throwing to Byron Pringle. Mooney and him haven't had that connection yet. The Komet connection hasn't happened yet. So I believe it's coming. It may not be this week, but it's coming. It's going to click for him at some point. But yeah. So Mason, everyone, make sure you guys check out Mason's show. Like I said, Bare Bones, him and Danny Meehan on Thursdays at 5:00 Central Time. Then, of course, when we're done, we'll chop it up, put it on a podcast. Check out the whole channel. Like I said earlier at the top, man, we have something pretty much every night on the podcast channel, every day on the podcast channel, and on the video channel, Second City Gridiron. So we're doing so much stuff. Of course, the site is always jumping to WindyCityGridiron.com. But do you have any final words before we get out of here?
No, I think we said everything we could possibly say about this game of the two titans of the NFL.
2-1 versus 2-1 to 3-1. So someone's to come out of this feeling really good about themselves. So until next time, bear down, my friends. Nice crisp 30-ish minutes. See, I tell you to remember to take a break. I forget to take a break on this show because this is the first year I've had a guest on the Information Conversation. Usually it's like a 10-15 minutes, boom, boom, in and out. Let's get the hell out of here,
Yeah, you wouldn't even have room for it to throw anything else in there.
But now I got you in here. I want to make sure you shine a little bit because your knowledge is so fun. It's just so interesting for the people listening. So I got to remember to take a break. So I'm gonna build that into my notes over here because it's not working. So, but yeah, we got a few comments here. People, of course, tiff. No interceptions from Justin. Those picks last week were bad. I mean, he just he talked about it in the presser. He threw bad balls.
It happens. I would be okay with the interceptions. Not every interception is the same. Just like you've talked about, not every sack is built the same too, right? If it was an interception where he was trying to fit it into a window that you just needed a little more air on the ball, right? He just needed like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You're going to take that. But when it's the ones like they were last week, where like the first one was just a miss, the second one was more of a just throw it up there and hoping for a little something. Those are the ones you can't have.
Yeah. We got Bear Down Corey Booth.
Yeah,
What's up,
Corey?
Mason? Yeah. So before you were doing stuff for you and now, you did stuff with the Chicago Audible, the Bears Bros back in the day. So you had a show back then. Was your show more based around injuries as well back then, or was it a little more traditional podcast stuff? Bears?
Yeah, it was more traditional. I mean, I got kind of brought on to do spot things originally. So it was, I can't remember which episode. It was when Jaylon Johnson got drafted, and they were talking about his shoulder, and I was like, nah, that's not what that's about. I tweeted at it because I listen to their podcast all the time. I tweeted at him saying that's not what that shoulder is going to be looking like. They asked me to come on and do a little thing, and then it started like that. Apparently I did suck at this, and they asked me to do it more full time. So yeah, when an injury popped up, I would give my 2 cents on it, but it was a little more traditional, just reacting to the game, things like that.
Yeah, like I said, I really value what you bring to the show and you're bringing to the channel, and it's just cool that you and Danny decided to do your own thing. And I love the puns, man. It's really corny, but it's it's like, for me, like I said, I do this show. Before, when I did it back in the day, I was all over the place. I didn't really have a format. And then me and JB started doing Bare and Balanced, and we came up with the idea of our categories. And like, man, that keeps the show tight. It's like you can't get off track when you have to go to the next category.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes our show goes long because we're just talking, but it's like we still got this category. So as you and Danny really, as you get into your groove, man, those categories are going to really keep you on point, help you out though. But another question here, someone asked Making Monsters. That was Taylor Dahl, and that is her real name, Taylor Dahl, which we had to ask when we had her come aboard. Her and Dylan Ryan, they do Making Monsters. This week, like I said, it was ACC beat writer. A lot of insight on Khalil Herbert, a lot of the stuff, the kind of person he is off the field as well. just a nice story. And, it's funny because we haven't had a chance to really see his personality shine in Chicago because he's the backup tailback. It's not often that guy's going to the media. So maybe after this week, we'll get to see him go to the media and talk about his 180-yard performance.
And he actually has a line of shirts. I have 2 of them. I got them. I was on the juice train way early. Literally, as soon as he got drafted, I was like, this is gonna be a dude. And so if anyone's interested, go buy some of his shirts. They're actually kind of cool.
What is it? Is his logo?
So one of them is it just says, it's orange shirt. It says juice and it's drippy off of it. And then I think the other one just says J Train or something on that one. I don't wear as much. The juice one's fun though.
Nice. I got a shout out here in the comments. TJ is one of WCG longtime commenters. He's on Twitter too. Go follow him out there. He's a big fan of McGruber as well. Heals all wounds. I'm not sure about that. The Saturday in the list of great Saturday Night Live skits that turn into movies, I have McGruber. I mean, I'll watch it. I'll laugh at it. I'm not ashamed to say, but I don't have it near the top where I'm gonna watch it on a plane ride home. I don't think I'm doing that.
I mean, if it was on the plane and that was the only one that was offered, and
that can't be the plane movie.
But that can't possibly be someone chose that movie.
We'll be pulling into O'Hare at such and such, and here's the McGruber. I can't see that happening there. So
no way.
Look, he's all over it. Yeah, that's the movie. It's just a horrible choice. They probably should have watched that Will Smith movie from a few years back,
Concussion,
where he was a doctor. I'm just saying. So
that's a great movie. If you haven't watched that, watch Concussion. Will Smith does a very good job.
I have not seen that movie yet, to be honest with you.
It's good.
I have to watch it.
It's definitely a little, built up just to make it more movie.
Yeah,
but it does show the original fight that had to go with the NFL just to make this legitimate. It has some of those stories of legitimate Steelers players that did suffer concussions and unfortunately at times may have committed suicide or things of that nature due to the CTE that they were suffering from. Yeah. So it's a real heavy hitter. I mean, don't watch it right before bed. Maybe make sure you can go on a nice walk afterwards. But especially now, if you're curious as to why the NFL might be so resistant to some changes, watch that movie and it's going to give you a solid answer.
I first got interested in the whole concussion thing. I'm a big wrestling fan. So Chris Nowinski, the Harvard, he was a pro wrestler for a while. He went to Harvard. When his wrestling career ended, that's kind of what got a lot of this started here. And that's what kind of brought the whole brain injury to the forefront because, I'm old. So back in the day, whenever something happened, it was oh, he got his bell rung, right?
Yeah.
That's all it was back then, or even further back, it's here's some smelling salts, and get back in there. It's not a big deal, but it's it's good that this is now in the forefront. It's good that it's being discussed. And, I coached youth football for a long time. And, I was coaching in the era when, they realized what it was. So we were always very cognizant of, teaching the proper technique. There is a way to tackle, to make sure your head's not in there. And, even dealing with some of those parents back then, they're old school and, oh, he's fine. And I'm I had kids where I'm I wouldn't play him, and, the parents are he's fine, and we're no, we're not going to play him because he got hurt the week before with a head injury. We're going to give it another week, and, go to the doctor, make sure you take care of it's his brain, man. You gotta, but it's now it's more prevalent. Now more youth coaches are aware of that. And you still see the dumbasses do their thing with some of the goofy drills they do. But for the most part, USA football does a great job teaching the concussion, the protocol, how to teach it, how to teach tackling, how to do all that kind of stuff. So anyone that has thinking about their kids playing football, look into it. But if I had a young son, I would let him play still to this day.
I would too, to be completely honest. And I'm one of my specialties is treating concussions. I probably get 3-4 patients like that a week. And that's the thing too. If you, little PSA out there, if you or someone a kid especially gets a concussion, it's not just a wait 2 days and symptoms go away, go back to a thing. I mean, there's legitimate rehab you should do for it. It's like a muscle, you strain your hamstring. Yes, you might feel better a week or two later, but that hamstring is still in a place where it could get hurt again. Same thing with the brain. There are certain things you do for the neck, the eyes, things you do for dual tasking. And, that's what I run through with my patients. So again, PSA, at least do a week or two of something with a physical therapist that knows what they're doing. Because it's something that can help you like significantly long term, especially because they found connections with concussion and knee injuries and ankle injuries. And you're like, why do I keep rolling my ankle? Well, it's because your brain on this side doesn't realize what's going on. It's a whole thing. I could do a whole podcast on just that, but
you probably should some point, because this is some good stuff, man. It's like, you know, we're over here, we're just doing a nice little podcast talking Bears, and here you are giving a PSA, helping people out. So, but I wish I got out here. My daughter is actually stirring over here. She's a teenager, and I'm still cool enough to hang out with. So we're gonna probably go do something tonight. So I'm gonna get out here, Mason. It was good. I'll cut this up, put it in a podcast, and we'll talk.
All right, have a good one.
All right.
Have fun.
Thanks, everyone.